You know that feeling. The sky is still clear, the sun is still out, but something in your head just shifts. A dull pressure starts building behind your eyes, around your temples, and you already know a storm is coming. Not because you checked the weather app, because your body told you first. If that sounds familiar, you're not imagining it, and you're definitely not crazy. Science is now showing that your body literally responds to changes in atmospheric pressure, sometimes 6 to 12 hours before the weather actually changes. Your head starts hurting before the first raindrop even falls. In fact, research from the American Migraine Foundation shows that over a third of migraine sufferers identify weather as one of their most consistent triggers. And one study found that lightning striking within 25 miles of your location increases your migraine risk by 31%. 31%, just from lightning nearby. So in this video, we're going to break down exactly what barometric pressure is, what it does to your brain, why so many people have been misdiagnosed with sinus headaches when they actually have migraines, and most importantly, what you can actually do about it. This content is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult your doctor or neurologist before making any health decisions. Your body is a barometer. Let's find out how it works. Alright, before we get into what's happening inside your brain, let's make sure we're all on the same page about what barometric pressure actually is, because it sounds more complicated than it really is. Barometric pressure, also called atmospheric pressure, is simply the weight of the air pushing down on you. Right now, as you're watching this, there are miles and miles of atmosphere stacked above your head, and all of that air has weight. That weight creates pressure on your body. You don't feel it most of the time because your body has equalized to it. The pressure inside you matches the pressure outside. Everything is in balance. But here's where it gets interesting. When the weather changes, a storm rolls in, a cold front meets a warm front, humidity spikes, the barometric pressure shifts. Sometimes it drops quickly. And when it does, that balance between the outside pressure and the pressure inside your body gets disrupted. Now think about your sinuses for a second. Your sinuses are air-filled cavities, little pockets of air sitting right behind your forehead, your cheeks, and around your eyes. When the pressure outside drops, the air inside those cavities wants to expand. And when it does, it pushes against the walls of your sinuses, causing swelling, inflammation, and that heavy pressing feeling in your face. Have you actually felt this before in a completely different situation? Think about the last time you were on a plane. During takeoff, the cabin pressure changes, and what happens? Your ears pop, you feel pressure in your head. Some people even get a sharp headache right as the plane climbs. That's barometric pressure change in real time. Your body is reacting to a pressure imbalance, the exact same mechanism that happens when a storm is approaching, just compressed into a few minutes instead of a few hours. But your sinuses aren't the only thing affected. The pressure shift also impacts your blood vessels and the fluid balance around your brain. And that's where things get a lot more serious and a lot more fascinating. That's what we're getting into next. Okay, so now we know that when barometric pressure drops, your sinuses feel it, but what's actually going on deeper inside, in your brain and nervous system? Because this is where it stops being about a little sinus discomfort and starts being about real debilitating pain. Let's walk through it step by step. When atmospheric pressure drops, it doesn't just affect your sinuses, it affects your blood vessels. The lower the pressure outside your body, the more your blood vessels tend to dilate, to expand. And remember from our previous video, the brain itself has no pain receptors. But the blood vessels surrounding your brain, those are loaded with nerve endings. So when those vessels expand, they press against sensitive nerve fibers and your brain reads that as pain. But it goes even deeper than that. Researchers believe that barometric pressure changes can actually alter your levels of serotonin, one of the key chemicals your brain uses to regulate pain, mood, and sleep. When pressure drops, serotonin levels can fluctuate, and that fluctuation lowers your brain's ability to manage pain signals. So it's not just that something is causing pain, it's that your brain becomes worse at blocking it. And then there's a molecule we talked about before, CGRP, calcitonin gene-related peptide. This is one of the main chemicals involved in migraine attacks. When the trigeminal nerve, those 3 branches of nerves in your face and skull, gets irritated by pressure changes, it releases CGRP. And CGRP does 3 things at once. It dilates blood vessels even further, it increases inflammation, and it amplifies pain signals. So you get a cascading effect, pressure drops, vessels expand, the trigeminal nerve fires, CGRP floods the area, and the pain just builds and builds. Now here's something that really stands out in the research. Scientists describe the migraine brain as a brain that hates change. A healthy brain can absorb small fluctuations in pressure, temperature, or routine without much trouble. But a migraine-prone brain is hypersensitive. It has a lower threshold for these shifts. So a pressure drop that one person wouldn't even notice can push a migraine brain over the edge. Researchers actually use the analogy of a cup that's already almost full. Things like stress, poor sleep, dehydration, skipping meals, those fill the cup throughout the day. And then a drop in barometric pressure comes along and adds just enough to make it overflow. That overflow is your migraine, and this is why so many people say they can feel the storm coming before it arrives. Their body, specifically their nervous system, is detecting a pressure change that hasn't even produced visible weather yet. Studies show this can happen 6 to 12 hours before the storm actually hits. Your body isn't predicting the weather, it's reacting to atmospheric changes that are already underway, you just can't see them yet. So no, you're not being dramatic. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it's designed to do. The problem is that for some people it does it too well. Alright, this might be the most important chapter in this entire video, because there's a very good chance that if you're watching this, you've been misdiagnosed or you've been misdiagnosing yourself for years. Here's what typically happens. The weather changes, your face starts hurting, you feel pressure behind your eyes and across your forehead, maybe your nose gets a little congested, and you think, that's my sinuses acting up again. You take a decongestant, maybe some allergy medication, and you push through. Sound familiar? Well, according to headache specialists, a huge number of people who believe they have sinus headaches actually have migraines. One study found that up to 90% of self-diagnosed sinus headaches were actually migraines when properly evaluated by a neurologist. 90%. That's not a small margin of error, that's almost everyone. So why does this confusion happen? Because the symptoms overlap in a way that's almost designed to trick you. Migraines triggered by barometric pressure changes cause pain in the exact same areas, behind the eyes, across the forehead, around the cheeks. They can even cause nasal congestion and a runny nose, which most people automatically associate with a sinus problem. So you feel it in your sinuses, you assume it's a sinus issue, and you treat it like one. But the actual source isn't your sinuses, it's your trigeminal nerve and the cascade of inflammation we just talked about. So how do you tell them apart? Let's break it down. A true sinus headache comes from an infection, sinusitis, and infections come with very specific signs. You'll have thick, discolored mucus, green or yellow. You might have a fever. The pain tends to get worse when you bend forward. And it usually follows a cold or upper respiratory infection. If you have those signs, yes, it's probably your sinuses. But if your headache comes with sensitivity to light or sound, if it throbs or pulses, if you feel nauseous, if it gets worse with physical activity, if it lasts anywhere from several hours to a couple of days, that's a migraine, even if it feels like it's in your sinuses. Even if your nose is stuffy, the location of the pain doesn't tell you the cause of the pain. And here's why this matters so much. If you're treating a migraine like a sinus problem, you're not just getting the wrong treatment, you might be making things worse. Taking decongestants and antihistamines for a migraine won't address the underlying neurological cause. And if you're reaching for over-the-counter pain relievers too frequently because nothing seems to work, remember from our previous video that can lead to medication overuse headaches, where the painkillers themselves start fueling the cycle. So the barometric pressure headache isn't really its own separate category. What's most likely happening is that the pressure change is triggering a migraine, one that presents with sinus-like symptoms. And once you know that, you can start treating the right condition instead of chasing the wrong one. So now you understand what's really going on. The pressure drops, your nervous system overreacts, your trigeminal nerve fires, and a migraine kicks in wearing a sinus headache disguise. The question is, what can you actually do about it? You can't control the weather, but you can control how prepared your body is when the weather changes. And that starts with one thing most people skip: tracking. Keep a headache diary. It doesn't have to be fancy. A notes app on your phone works fine. Every time you get a headache, write down the date, the time, what the weather was doing, what you ate, how you slept, and your stress level that day. Do this for 2 or 3 months and patterns will start jumping off the page. You'll begin to see connections you never noticed before, and more importantly, your doctor will too. Now, pair that diary with a barometric pressure app. There are apps designed specifically for this. They track atmospheric pressure in your area and send you alerts when a significant drop is coming. Remember, your headache can start 6 to 12 hours before the storm arrives. So if you know the pressure is about to drop tonight, you can start preparing this afternoon. And what does preparing look like? Think of it as lowering the water level in that cup we talked about, so that when the pressure drop hits, it doesn't overflow. First, hydration. This is the simplest and most underrated defense. When your body is dehydrated, your blood vessels are already under stress. Add a pressure drop on top of that, and you're giving your brain every reason to trigger a migraine. Medical professionals generally recommend increasing your water intake on days when weather changes are expected, especially in hot or humid conditions where you can lose up to a liter of fluid per hour. Second, sleep. The migraine brain hates change, and nothing disrupts your brain's stability more than inconsistent sleep. Going to bed and waking up at the same time, even on weekends, gives your nervous system a predictable rhythm. That predictability is protective. When a pressure drop comes, a well-rested brain handles it far better than an exhausted one. Third, some healthcare providers recommend discussing supplements with your doctor. Magnesium and riboflavin, also known as vitamin B2, have shown up repeatedly in migraine research as potentially helpful for prevention. These aren't overnight fixes, but over time some patients report fewer and less intense episodes. Of course, always consult your healthcare provider before adding any supplement to your routine. Fourth, manage your environment. On days when the barometric pressure is shifting, try to minimize your other triggers. Avoid bright screens for extended periods. Skip the glass of wine. Don't skip meals. Reduce caffeine if you're sensitive to it. The idea is simple. If you know one trigger is coming that you can't control, remove the ones you can. And fifth, have a plan. Know what works for you when a headache starts. Whether that's a specific medication your doctor has prescribed, a cold compress, a dark room, or a combination of all three, the faster you respond to the early signs, the better your chances of keeping it manageable. Waiting until the pain peaks to take action is like trying to stop a fire after it's already spread through the house. You can't stop the storm, but you can absolutely stop going into it unprepared. So let's talk about when tracking and lifestyle adjustments aren't enough, because for some people they won't be. And that's not a failure, that's just your nervous system telling you it needs more support. If your headaches are happening more than 4 times a month, if they're lasting longer than they used to, if they're getting more intense with each weather change, or if they're starting to interfere with your work, your relationships, or your ability to just live your life, it's time to see a neurologist or a headache specialist. Not a general practitioner who might hand you another round of decongestants, a specialist who understands the difference between a sinus issue and a neurological condition. Because here's the good news. There are now preventive treatments specifically designed for migraines, including medications that target CGRP, that same molecule we talked about earlier. These are not painkillers. They work by blocking the chemical cascade before it even starts. There are also options like beta blockers, anticonvulsants, and in some cases, Botox injections that have shown real results for chronic migraine patients. The science has come a long way, and there are more options today than ever before. But none of those options are available to you if you're still treating a migraine like a sinus headache. And that's really the core message of everything we covered today. So let's bring it together. Your body is a barometer. When atmospheric pressure drops, your sinuses swell, your blood vessels dilate, serotonin fluctuates, the trigeminal nerve fires, CGRP floods the system, and your head pays the price. This isn't in your imagination, it's physiology, it's neuroscience. And for over a third of migraine sufferers, it's one of the most consistent and frustrating triggers they deal with. But now you know what's actually happening. You know it's probably not your sinuses. You know how to track it, how to prepare for it, and when to get professional help. That knowledge alone puts you ahead of most people who are still popping decongestants and wondering why nothing works. If this video helped you understand something you've been dealing with for years, share it with someone who needs to hear it. That friend who always gets headaches before it rains, that family member who swears they can feel the weather changing, because they can. And now there's science to back it up. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. Here at Headache Relief Lab, we break down the science behind your pain in a way that actually makes sense. No fear-mongering, no fluff, just clarity. Leave a comment below and tell me, can you feel the storm coming before it arrives? I want to hear your experience. And as always, this video is educational. It's not a replacement for your doctor. If something doesn't feel right, go get checked. That's never the wrong decision. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one.